My girlfriend thought she could disrespect me and face no consequences. She learned otherwise. I'm a cybersecurity specialist, and my girlfriend Erica is a freelance illustrator. We've been together for 2.5 years, living together for the past 8 months. I thought things were solid between us, but apparently I was dead wrong. 3 nights ago, I woke up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and noticed Erica wasn't in bed. She wasn't anywhere in the house either. No explanation, no heads up, just gone at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. I waited up until 4:30 a.m. when she finally came back. When I asked where she'd been, she just shrugged and said she needed some air and had gone for a drive. Fair enough, I guess. We all need space sometimes. But when I mentioned that I was worried since she left in the middle of the night without saying anything, that's when things went sideways. Erica immediately got defensive and started laying into me about being controlling and possessive. She said I was acting like her father and that she didn't need to report her every movement to me. When I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to control her, just that I was concerned, she laughed and said, "What are you, my keeper? I'm a grown woman, Joey. I don't need your permission to leave my own apartment." Technically, it's my apartment, but I bit my tongue on that point. The conversation spiraled from there. She accused me of being insecure, said I was suffocating her, and told me that if you can't handle dating an independent woman, maybe you should find someone more submissive instead. I tried to de-escalate, but she kept pushing. She said she felt trapped in our relationship and that she needed more freedom to be herself. When I asked what that meant specifically, she got even more aggressive and told me to figure it out myself. Erica's behavior was setting off every red flag in my head. The secretive middle-of-the-night departure, the immediate deflection when questioned, the aggressive response, and the attempts to flip the script and make me the problem. This wasn't just someone needing space. This was someone who got caught doing something they shouldn't have been doing and was now trying to manipulate me into backing down. But instead of calling her out or starting a fight, I just said, "You're right, I'm sorry for overreacting. You should have whatever freedom you need." She seemed surprised by my response but looked satisfied. She went to bed and I stayed up thinking about what I'd observed. By morning, I'd made my decision. Erica has been taking advantage of my resources for months. I helped her set up a business banking account and added her as an authorized user on one of my credit cards for emergencies. I gave her access to my Adobe Creative Suite license since she couldn't afford her own. I even set up a secure cloud storage system for her artwork and client files. Most importantly, she's been living in my apartment, sleeping in my bed, eating food I buy, using utilities I pay for, all while contributing maybe $300 or $400 a month and acting like she's doing me a favor. If Erica wants independence and freedom from my controlling behavior, then she can have exactly that. So yesterday morning, after she left for a client meeting, I began cutting off her access to everything. Changed all the passwords. Removed her from the credit card. Canceled her access to the software licenses. Backed up her files from my cloud storage and prepared them for transfer, then removed her access. But the masterstroke was calling her father. Colonel Richard Hayes is a retired Army officer who's known for being a strict, no-nonsense type of guy. Erica has mentioned multiple times how much she hates his military mindset and how she could never move back home because she can't stand living under his roof again. I called him yesterday afternoon and explained the situation. Colonel Hayes listened quietly and then said, "I'll drive up tomorrow morning to collect her and her things. It sounds like she needs to remember some lessons about responsibility and respect." The way he said it made it very clear that Erica's homecoming wasn't going to be comfortable. I changed the locks on my apartment yesterday evening. Erica came home around 8 p.m. to find her key didn't work. When she called me, I calmly explained that since she'd made it clear she felt trapped in our arrangement and needed freedom, I was helping her achieve that goal. I told her that her father would be arriving in the morning to help her transition to her new living situation. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted about 15 seconds. Then she absolutely lost it. She started screaming about how I couldn't just kick her out, and how I was being vindictive and cruel. She demanded I let her back in immediately and said I was ruining her life over nothing. I told her she could collect her personal belongings once her father arrived, and that I'd prepared all her work files for transfer to whatever storage solution she preferred. I wished her well and hung up. She called back 6 times. I didn't answer. This morning, Colonel Hayes showed up right on time with a U-Haul trailer. Erica was with him, looking like she hadn't slept at all. She tried to argue with me about letting her stay just a few more days to find somewhere else to live, but Colonel Hayes cut her off and told her to focus on packing because they had a long drive ahead of them. While she was gathering her things, she kept trying to convince me that I was overreacting and that we could work this out if I'd just be reasonable. She said she'd been going through a stressful time and had handled things poorly, but that didn't mean we had to throw away everything we'd built together. I pointed out that what we'd built together was primarily me providing financial support while she contributed minimal resources and apparently felt entitled to complete freedom from any accountability. She started crying and said I was being heartless and that she loved me. Colonel Hayes finished loading her things while she was still trying to negotiate. When he was done, he told her it was time to go. She begged me to reconsider, saying she'd do better and that she just needed another chance. I told her that her idea of doing better and mine were clearly incompatible. She looked like she was going to say something else, but Colonel Hayes put his hand on her shoulder and guided her toward his truck. As they were leaving, I heard him telling her that they'd be having a long conversation about responsibility, respect, and consequences during the drive home. That was 6 hours ago. I'm currently sitting in my quiet apartment, eating takeout and wondering if I handled this correctly. Am I the asshole here? Should I have tried harder to talk things through before taking such decisive action? Or was I right to treat her behavior like a security breach and respond accordingly? Update 1. Posted 4 days later. Original post got a lot more attention than I expected. Thanks for all the support and advice. I've got some updates that I think will give everyone a clearer picture of the situation. First off, Colonel Hayes called me yesterday afternoon. The conversation was illuminating. Apparently, Erica's transition back to living under her father's roof hasn't been going smoothly. She's been having a hard time adjusting to a household where she's expected to contribute to chores, follow basic rules about communication, and account for her whereabouts. But here's the kicker. During one of their conversations about responsibility, Erica broke down and admitted what she'd actually been doing on these late-night excursions. She's been seeing someone else for the past 6 weeks. Not exactly shocking, given the red flags, but the details are what really got to me. She'd been meeting up with some guy she met through her freelance work, apparently a client. She'd been going to his place after I fell asleep, usually staying until 3 or 4 a.m., then coming back home like nothing happened. When Colonel Hayes asked her why she didn't just break up with me if she wanted to be with someone else, her answer was revealing. She said she wasn't ready to give up the stability I provided, but she needed more excitement than I could offer. The guy she was seeing, also in a relationship, with a fiancé apparently. Real classy operation they had going. Colonel Hayes told me all this because he wanted me to understand that I'd handled the situation with more restraint and intelligence than Erica deserved. His exact words, "But wait, there's more. Remember how Erica accused me of being controlling and said she needed her independence? Well, it turns out she'd been planning to move in with the other guy once his engagement fell through. She'd been convinced that he was going to leave his fiancée for her and that they'd start this amazing new life together. Plot twist. When Erica called him to explain her situation and ask if she could crash at his place for a while, he basically told her that he wasn't looking for anything serious and that she'd misunderstood the nature of their relationship. Then he blocked her number. So now she's stuck back home with her military father. No relationship with me, no relationship with him, no financial support system, and a very clear understanding of what her independence actually looks like. Colonel Hayes said she's been spending most of her time in her childhood bedroom, crying and asking if he thinks I might take her back if she apologized. He told her that bridges burned with lies and disrespect don't typically get rebuilt, and that she should focus on figuring out how to support herself instead of looking for the next person to take care of her. I have to admit, I'm impressed with how Colonel Hayes is handling this. As for me, I'm doing surprisingly well. The apartment feels peaceful now. I've been sleeping better, eating better, and actually enjoying my free time instead of constantly trying to figure out what Erica needed from me or why she seemed dissatisfied. A few of Erica's mutual friends have reached out to get my side of the story. Word has apparently gotten around about what happened, and Erica's been trying to paint herself as the victim of my sudden and cruel behavior. When I've explained the actual sequence of events, most people have been understanding of my actions. One friend told me that Erica had actually been complaining about me being boring and too stable for months, but that she'd never mentioned wanting to break up because she liked the security I provided. Some people have asked if I regret my response or if I think I was too harsh. Honestly, no, I don't doubt that anymore. Erica made a series of deliberate choices over the course of 6 weeks. She chose to betray my trust, chose to put both of us at risk STD testing anyone, and chose to respond to my legitimate concerns with disrespect and manipulation. The only thing I did was stop enabling those choices. I didn't sabotage her, I just stopped subsidizing her betrayal. Update 2, posted 1 week later. Well, this situation just keeps developing in ways I didn't expect. Erica decided she wasn't done with our relationship after all, and her attempt at reconciliation was something to behold. Last Friday evening, I got a text from Erica asking if she could stop by to talk about where we left things. I didn't respond. About an hour later, I got another text saying she was in the area and wanted to clear the air between us. Still didn't respond. Then around 9 p.m. my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera and saw Erica standing outside with a suitcase and what looked like a grocery bag. She was alone, no sign of her father or his truck. I didn't answer the door. Instead, I texted her, "Whatever you're planning isn't going to work. Please leave." She texted back immediately, "Just give me 5 minutes to explain everything. I have information you need to hear." Now, I was curious despite myself, so I opened the door but didn't invite her in. I stayed in the doorway and asked what she was talking about. Erica launched into this speech about how she'd made a terrible mistake and how the last 2 weeks had opened her eyes to what she'd lost. She said living with her father had reminded her of how good she'd had it with me and that she wanted to make things right. When I asked about the cheating, she tried to minimize it. She said it had only been physical and that she'd never had feelings for the other guy. She claimed she'd been confused and acting out because she felt like our relationship had gotten stale and she'd made a stupid decision that didn't reflect her real feelings. The grocery bag, it turned out, contained ingredients to make my favorite meal. She'd planned to cook dinner and show me how much she'd changed. The suitcase was because she'd already left her father's house and needed a place to stay while we worked things out. I told her that I wasn't interested in working anything out and that she should probably head back to her father's house. That's when she dropped the bomb she'd apparently been saving. She told me she was pregnant. I'm not going to lie, that stopped me cold for a moment. But then I asked her how far along she was. She said about 6 weeks. I asked if she'd seen a doctor yet. She said she'd taken multiple tests but hadn't made an appointment yet. 6 weeks would put the conception date right around the time she started cheating. I pointed this out. Erica's whole demeanor shifted. She started crying and said she was sure it was mine because she'd been careful with the other guy. When I asked what careful meant, she said they'd use protection most of the time. Most of the time, huh? I told her that if she was actually pregnant, the first step would be a paternity test, and that we could discuss any actual responsibilities once we had that information. Until then, I wasn't making any decisions or changes based on her claims. She absolutely lost it. started screaming about how I was abandoning her when she needed me most. She said she couldn't believe I would demand proof, that I was the father, and that my response proved I'd never really loved her. I stayed calm and told her that trust was something she'd forfeited when she decided to cheat, lie, and manipulate me. And I wasn't going to be manipulated into resuming a relationship based on unverified claims. That's when she tried to push past me into the apartment. I blocked her and told her she needed to leave immediately or I'd call the police. She started banging on the door frame and screaming about how I was destroying her life. I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. She immediately stopped screaming and backed away from the door, but she didn't leave. Instead, she sat down on the hallway floor and started crying dramatically, saying she was all alone and didn't know what to do. I finished dialing and told the dispatcher I had someone refusing to leave my property. While I was on the phone, Erica got up and started walking toward the elevator, dragging her suitcase and crying loudly enough for my neighbors to hear. The police showed up about 10 minutes later, but Erica was long gone by then. The officers took a report and gave me a case number, but said that unless she came back and caused more problems, there wasn't much else they could do. About an hour after that, I got a call from Colonel Hayes. Erica had apparently shown up at his house around midnight, hysterical and claiming I'd thrown her out on the street when she tried to reconcile with me. She told him about the pregnancy claim and said I'd refused to take responsibility for my child. Colonel Hayes asked her some pointed questions about the timeline and circumstances. Apparently, when Erica couldn't give him a clear answer, he'd taken her phone and discovered that she'd been texting with multiple guys over the past week, apparently trying to line up backup options in case her reconciliation with me didn't work out. When Colonel Hayes confronted her about this pattern of deception, Erica broke down and admitted that she'd lied about the pregnancy. She said she'd been desperate and thought it might convince me to take her back. She'd taken photos of positive results she'd found online, planning to use them as proof if I asked for evidence. Colonel Hayes was not pleased. He told me that Erica would be returning to live with him, but under much stricter conditions this time. He said she'd clearly learned nothing from her previous consequences and needed more structured guidance. He also said that Erica was no longer allowed to contact me directly, and that any future communication would go through him first. He didn't think there would be any future communication, but wanted to establish the boundary clearly. So that's where things stand now. Erica is back at her father's house, grounded like a teenager, and apparently facing some serious consequences for her continued lying and manipulation. I have to say, I'm impressed by how consistently Erica has validated every decision I made in this situation. Every time I've thought maybe I was too harsh or acted too quickly, she's done something that proves I was actually too lenient. Final update. Posted 3 weeks later. I wasn't planning to post another update, but the way this situation has finally resolved is too perfect not to share. About a week after my last update, I got a call from Colonel Hayes with some interesting news. Erica's lies had started affecting more than just our relationship. They'd caught up with her professionally as well. Remember the client she'd been having an affair with? Well, it turns out Erica had been doing more than just sleeping with him. She'd also been overbilling him for work, claiming expenses for supplies and software she hadn't actually purchased, since she'd been using my licenses, and padding her hours significantly. The guy's fiancé had discovered the affair and, in the process of investigating, had also uncovered the billing irregularities. She works in accounting and knew immediately that something was off when she reviewed Erica's invoices. They reported Erica for fraud. Not only that, but during the investigation, it came out that Erica had been using a similar billing scam with at least 3 other clients. She'd been systematically overcharging freelance clients while using my resources to complete the work, then pocketing the difference. She'd essentially been running a small fraud operation while living under my roof and using my infrastructure. The total amount she'd stolen was around $8,000 across multiple clients over the past year and a half. Not a huge sum, but definitely enough to constitute serious fraud charges. When the investigation started, Erica apparently panicked and tried to pin some of the blame on me. She told investigators that I had pressured her to inflate her billing and had been taking a cut of her fraudulent charges. She claimed I was the mastermind behind the whole operation and that she'd been afraid to refuse my demands. This was a spectacular own goal on her part because it prompted investigators to look into my finances and digital footprint. What they found, of course, was a completely clean record, evidence that I'd been financially supporting Erica rather than taking money from her, and digital logs that proved I'd had no access to or involvement in her client communications or billing. The investigators actually apologized to me for having to look into my finances and said it was obvious within about an hour that Erica's accusations were desperate lies from someone trying to avoid responsibility. Erica has now been charged with multiple counts of fraud and one count of filing a false police report for trying to blame me. Her court date is next month, and according to Colonel Hayes, she's likely looking at significant fines, restitution payments, and possibly even jail time depending on how her case goes. But wait, there's more. The whole investigation triggered a review of Erica's other business dealings, and it turns out she'd been cheating on her taxes for years. She'd been underreporting her income and claiming business expenses for things she never actually purchased again, using my resources instead. The IRS is now involved, and Erica owes back taxes, penalties, and interest going back 3 years. The total is somewhere around $15,000, according to Colonel Hayes. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in my peaceful apartment, enjoying my financial stability, my clean legal record, and my quiet evenings without constantly wondering what lies I'm being told or what manipulation is coming next. The best part, Erica apparently asked Colonel Hayes if he thought there was any chance I might be willing to help her with the legal fees, since this all started because of our relationship problems. His response, according to him, was, "Erica, you committed fraud while living in his house, using his resources, cheating on him, and lying to his face. Then you tried to blame him for your crimes when you got caught. If you think he owes you anything other than a restraining order, you're even more delusional than I thought." Erica's lawyer, a public defender, since she can't afford private counsel, has apparently advised her to plead guilty and throw herself on the mercy of the court. The evidence against her is overwhelming, and her attempt to blame me actually made things worse by adding the false report charge. Colonel Hayes told me that Erica has finally stopped asking about reconciliation and started asking about bankruptcy lawyers instead. He said this was probably the first realistic assessment of her situation she'd made in months. I'm actually grateful this all came out when it did. If Erica had been more careful or if I'd been more gullible, I could have spent years unknowingly subsidizing fraud while being cheated on and manipulated. Instead, I got a clean break, and Erica got the consequences she'd been avoiding. Thanks for all the support and advice, Reddit. I officially close this chapter of my life now. Edit. A few people have asked about whether I'm worried about Erica trying to retaliate or cause more problems for me. Colonel Hayes has made it clear to Erica that any attempt to contact me or interfere with my life will result in her losing his support completely, and with criminal charges pending, she can't afford to make things worse for herself. And yes, I've considered getting a restraining order, but honestly, I don't think it's necessary. If anything changes, I'll take appropriate action, but right now Erica has much bigger problems than trying to bother me.